Evening, everybody. Let's start with our motivation. And again, sitting here in cyclic existence where every possible, imaginable thing is occurring right at this very instant. Some beings in the hell realms experiencing great pain, or even in the human realm with great pain. Others at the very same moment in the celestial realms experiencing fantastic pleasure and happiness, and even in this human realm beings experiencing much happiness. And it all happens at the same time. Just different sentient beings according to our karma, according to our thoughts, according to what our mind, be it virtuous or non-virtuous, has set in action. And so, since we all want happiness, not suffering, it's important to be able to manage this mind and not just let it go wherever it wants. Because it will create the hell realms and it will create the God realms. But at the end of the day, all of that is impermanent and we're back where we started. So we want to use the power of this mind, the potency of this mind, to penetrate into the nature of reality and use that wisdom to cleanse the mind of all defilements. And to do that for the benefit of all sentient beings, so that we can help them as a reliable guide on the path to enlightenment. So to do that, we need to learn the Dharma, and that's why we're here this evening. So take a moment and generate that motivation. Okay, so last week we had started talking about establishing mindfulness on the mind, okay, and saying that the mind has the nature of the observer. It is what perceives. And we usually think of our mind as one solid thing, but in actual fact, there's many different states of mind, many different types of mind. The mind isn't one thing. Okay, we speak of a mental continuum, but actually it's just the continuum of all these different consciousnesses and mental factors flowing along together. So we talked about the 6 primary minds that perceive the basic nature of the object, the 5 senses plus the mental consciousness. And then we talked about the mental factors that are actually 84,000. Actually, there might be 84,000 negative ones and 84,000 positive ones. I'm not sure. I think so. Mm-hmm. So then, but there's this setup in the mind of an awareness text of 51 mental factors that are very crucial to understand, so that we can become enlightened. And so we've been going through some of those. We talked about the 5 omnipresent mental factors, the 5 object ascertaining mental factors, the 11 virtuous ones, and the 6 root afflictions, which can be divided into 10 root afflictions. And now we're going to start on the 20 auxiliary afflictions. Okay, so the root ones were so called because they were the root of cyclic existence, the main principal ones, and they were also the root of these auxiliary ones. And the auxiliary ones are so called because they're aspects or extensions of the root afflictions, and because they occur in dependence upon the root afflictions. Okay, and actually when we go through these, and all 51, there's a few that more that we can think of that we don't find explicitly mentioned in here, so maybe we'll talk about them later, but at least, that we can talk about briefly the ones that we have on the list right now. And the purpose of this is by seeing that there's so many different mental factors and so many different consciousnesses that we see that the mind is not one solid thing, okay? And so because we usually tend to grasp at the mind as being the self, if we can see the mind itself is not one solid thing, then that helps to loosen the feeling of the self. Okay? So, the 20 auxiliary ones. So, they're classified in terms of which of the root ones they're derived from. Okay, so there's 5 of them that are derived from anger. Okay, so those are first wrath. So it's a very malicious state of mind that wants to harm somebody immediately. There's resentment or vengeance, which holds on to the fact that somebody has harmed us and we want to harm them back. There's spite, which is preceded by either wrath or vengeance, and it motivates us to say really nasty things to other people. 4th one is jealousy, which looks at others' good qualities and good fortunes and says, I can't bear it, they should be mine. Really nice mental state, isn't it? Yeah. And then the 5th one is called harmfulness or cruelty, and this is a malicious mind that has no compassion or kindness and just wishes to inflict harm and belittle and disregard others. So those 5 all come from anger. Pretty nasty mental states, aren't they? And yet we have them. Okay, then there's 3 of them that are derived specifically from attachment. The first one is miserliness or stinginess, and this is a mind that holds on to our possessions with no wish to give it away because we're attached to it. So it's either our material possessions or our reputation, but this is mine and you can't have it. So it's that holding mind, okay? Then there's haughtiness, which can also be translated as complacency. So this is a mind that is pays attention to the good qualities and the fortune that we have, and produces a very false sense of security or a false sense of confidence. So we become very complacent, or we become very haughty, thinking, oh, I have all these good conditions and they're here forever, and, like this. So this is a mental state we have to be careful of because it really leads us to neglect our Dharma practice. And then the 3rd one is called agitation or excitement. So this is a mind that doesn't allow, a mental fact that doesn't allow the mind to rest on a virtuous object. And so it especially comes up in meditation, when we want to concentrate on a virtuous object and the mind is, but I want to go to the movies and I want to see this person, I want to have a good time here, and my relatives and all, all of how we run through all of our past episodes from our life and how much fun we had 5, 10, 50 years ago, and and all the good things we're going to do in the future. And okay, so that's this one. Yeah. Okay, so those are derived from attachment. And then there's some derive from ignorance, okay? 2, 4, 6 of them derive from ignorance. So one is called concealment. So this is a mind that wants to hide our faults. Whenever somebody with a good intention tries to talk to us about something that, you know, that we're doing amiss or going in the wrong direction, but we don't want to hear about it, and so we conceal our faults, we conceal our non-virtues, we pretend we don't have them. Yeah, because what business does this other person have noticing them? I didn't give them permission to notice my faults. Therefore, what you're doing is illegal, because I don't have any. Okay, then the next one is called dullness or foggy-mindedness. So this causes the entire mind to lapse into darkness, and so we can't see the object clearly. So we have this one in meditation too. Okay, then the third one is laziness. So this is a mind that grasps onto an object that offers temporary happiness and doesn't want to do anything constructive, or even if it does, is too weak-minded to do it. Okay, so it's a mind that's kind of bored, that just grasps onto anything for amusement to keep itself occupied, and doesn't really want to do anything virtuous. And we have this mind a lot too, don't we? Yeah. I was thinking about it, you know, like sometimes we say, oh, email is such a pain in the neck, you know, I have to do this, and these people are writing this and writing for that and that and that and that, all these people pulling on me. And yet, if we don't get any email, there's this feeling of like, oh no, you know, kind of. So, you know, so then there's the thing of, well, I better churn something up, yeah, to keep me amused, because, and then you realize that you like all this stuff that you consider a nuisance simply because it keeps you occupied and your mind's spinning around doing something, because otherwise you don't know what to do with yourself. Has that happened to you? Yeah. Now, I know I'm being very old-fashioned talking about email, because I've read that email is going out of style for most things because people are texting and instant messaging and all that kind of stuff. So email now is for us old folks. Okay. Okay, then the next one is called lack of faith or lack of conviction. So this is a mind that causes us to have no faith or confidence or trust in things that are important, like the law of karma and its effects. And so it makes the mind kind of lazy and dull and ignorant, because we have no confidence in, you know, karma and its effect. We have no confidence that things are empty. We're just kind of, you know, we have no faith, so the mind is overwhelmed by ignorance. Okay, then the next one is called forgetfulness. And this is a lack of mindfulness, because remember when we were discussing mindfulness, that mental factor also has to do with memory. So forgetfulness is the one that doesn't remember. So it causes the apprehension of a constructive object, of a virtuous object, to be lost. And in that way, it induces the memory of a non-virtuous object, or not, you know, it takes you off into distraction. So this one happens a lot in meditation too, as well as in daily life. Trying to focus on something virtuous, and then the mind is in la-la land, yeah? And then the last one under that is derived from ignorance is called non-introspective awareness, or the lack of introspective awareness. Okay? So this, again, isn't just the lack of it, it's an afflictive intelligence which has made no or only a very rough general analysis and is not fully attentive or alert to the conduct of our body, speech, and mind. Okay? And so it thus lets us, we start acting with careless indifference. So remember when we were talking, we've spent some time talking about introspective alertness, which interestingly enough is not mentioned as a separate mental factor, even though non-introspective awareness is. Okay, but we can assume one because we know the other. Okay, so this one, again, is one that we have very often. An afflictive, remember I said this word when we were going through the word sharab or prajna, intelligence, and saying that there's certain afflictive intelligences, so this is one of them, okay? And so it doesn't, it's the one that makes us space cadets. Yeah, we aren't being attentive to what am I saying, what am I doing, what am I thinking. We're just spaced, okay? So I think we get more of this as we get older. Because we start walking into a room and going, what did I come here for? Yeah, so these last two, forgetfulness and non-introspective awareness, And I wonder, I've been wondering, do they happen because of some, degeneration in the brain? Or is it just because as we get older, we get so much sensory overload, after all these years, that we start blocking stuff out on an unconscious level, and that's why we aren't paying attention or we forget. Yeah? Anyway, just something to check up on. Okay, then there's two of them that are derived from both attachment and ignorance. Okay, so the first one here is called pretension or deceit. So this is one that is based on being attached to respect or material gain. So in that way it's derived from attachment. But it's also derived from ignorance because it fabricates a wonderful quality about us and then wishes to make that wonderful quality about us known to others so that they will believe that we have it. Mm-hmm. Okay? So it's the mind that wants to impress other people. Yeah? And, so we fabricate some kind of quality because we want people to think well of us. And then we act on that, hoping to convince them that we are like that. So this is the mental state that's very active when when we're being a people pleaser. And it's a mental state that's active when we are wanting people to like us. Okay? And when we want to impress people. So we fabricate something and we try to become what we think they want us to be. Yeah, so we focus on what they want us to be. We aren't that, so we fabricate it in ourselves to convince them that we are that so that they'll like us. Yeah, brings a lot of problems in our life, but we do it. And then the one that's coupled with that is called dissimulation or dishonesty. And this one is also based on being attached to material gain and respect. But what it does is it hides our faults. Okay? And by pretending that we don't have them at all. Okay? So it prevents others from knowing our faults. Who, me? Oh, I don't have that problem. Yeah? You're accusing me of doing that? Sorry. Yeah. I wouldn't do something nasty like that. Yeah. We do this one a lot too, don't we? So these two, pretension and dissimulation, impressing people with qualities we don't have, yeah, hiding our faults and pretending we don't have them, yeah. So, Okay. So that one sounds like this other one that we just talked about, which was concealment. Yeah? Okay, so you're going to ask me how they're different. Okay. So, concealment, definition, wishes to hide our faults whenever another person with a benevolent intention, free from non-virtuous aspiration, confusion, hatred, or fear, talks about such faults. So this is the one that comes up, when in the Vinaya, when, somebody's getting admonished, and then they say, oh, I don't have any problems, you're the one that, have non-virtuous mind and are afflicted by ignorance and fear and things like that, okay? So that's concealment. The one of dissimulation is similar in the sense that we're hiding our faults, but it's motivated by attachment to material gain and to praise and reputation. Okay? And dissimulation also wants to not just hide the faults, the concealment arises when somebody points them out and then we say, I don't have them. The dissimulation wants to prevent anybody from even seeing them in the first place. Okay? Then we also have 4 afflictions, auxiliary afflictions, that are derived from all 3 poisonous attitudes, from ignorance, attachment, and anger. So the first one here is lack of integrity. So remember when we were talking about the virtuous minds, integrity was a mind that because of our own sense of self-respect and our own dharma practice, our own integrity, we don't want to do non-virtue. So lack of integrity, we don't have this one at all. So there's no sense of our personal conscience or refraining from doing negativity. Okay, so this is a very dangerous one. And the next one that follows is inconsideration for others, which is the opposite of the virtuous mental factor, which was consideration for others, which is restraining ourselves from negative actions because we don't want to affect others adversely and we care about them and their spiritual practice and so on. Okay, but this one of inconsideration for others, it doesn't take others into account at all, and so it doesn't restrain from negative actions, out of considering, how our actions affect others. Okay, also very dangerous. Then the next one is unconscientiousness. Okay. So so this one is influenced by laziness. It wishes to act in an unrestrained manner without cultivating virtue or guarding the mind against destructive behavior or contact with the people and objects that spark that destructive behavior. Okay, so unconscientiousness doesn't care at all about virtue. It doesn't care beans about it. It just wants to act, and I want to do whatever I want to do in any kind of unrestrained way. It doesn't matter how it affects me. It doesn't matter how it affects others. And I'm not going to I just want to do what I want to do. And so as a result, makes no effort to stay away from the situations that trigger the afflictions. And so, therefore, we get ourselves in situations that aren't good for us. Our afflictions get triggered because we have this lack of conscientiousness. We're reckless, and then it's down the slippery slope. And then the 4th one here is distraction. And this is unable to direct the mind towards a constructive object and disperses it to a variety of other objects. So, whereas agitation was directed only towards objects of attachment, distraction goes everywhere. Yeah. Okay. It can, we can think of our enemy, we can think of people we don't like, we can worry, all those kind of things maybe fall into distraction. Now, okay. Yeah, then there's 4 variable mental factors, and these ones by themselves are neither virtuous nor non-virtuous, but it depends on what other mental factors are involved with them and how they're thinking, okay, and what objects they're involved in. So the first one is sleep. So the sleep makes the mind unclear. It gathers the sense consciousnesses inwards and renders the mind incapable of apprehending the body. So usually, very often, our ordinary sleep is influenced by ignorance, isn't it? Yeah? I want to shut down, don't bug me, I'm going to sleep. It's our way of escaping the world, isn't it? And just, I don't want to deal with anybody or anything. It's my time to be ignorant. And I am maintaining that I have the need to have 8 to 10 hours of being ignorant every day. Yeah, you should read. I've been working on this one meditation manual by one Tentai monk, and he was quoting, I think he was quoting Nagarjuna's treatise on wisdom, and it's just incredible, kind of, you're hanging on the edge of the cliff, this is not the time to go to sleep, and really kind of strongly warning us. But I can just see, this poor monk with such great bodhicitta trying to warn us of the fault of our ignorant sleep, and we're just going, leave me alone. You're disturbing me. Okay. But sleep is called a variable one in that, if we go to sleep with a non-virtuous mind, our sleep becomes non-virtuous. And we can see our dreams are usually pretty agitated and nightmares and things like that. If we go to sleep with a virtuous mind, then we might even have some virtuous dreams, where we're seeing His Holiness, or we're meditating, or we're being generous, or something like that. Or there might just be a neutral mind. So that's why before we go to sleep, we try and generate a virtuous mental state. Yeah, while we dedicate before and we set our intention for the morning. So hopefully, that time we use sleeping won't just be complete ignorance or non-virtue. Okay. Then the second of the 4 variable ones is regret. So regret is a mind that regards an appropriate or an inappropriate action that we've done, and says this is something that I don't want to do again. Okay? So regret becomes a virtuous mental state when we're regretting non-virtue. Okay? So, when we're deliberately doing purification and we're seeing our past non-virtues and we're regretting them, then that kind of regret is virtuous. But sometimes we regret our virtuous actions. We make a donation and then we go, oh gee, I shouldn't have given that, now I don't have it. Okay? Or we help somebody and then we go, oh, why did I help them? I could have been sleeping, taking a nap that time, and I just put out too much energy helping that person, now I'm exhausted. Okay? So, we can regret our virtuous things too. Maybe you go on retreat and then you come home and a family member is in a bad mood, and because they're in a bad mood, they say, why did you go on that retreat? You left me alone. And then, you get full of doubt. Oh, why did I go on that retreat? I shouldn't have gone on it. Yeah? And so there you go, kind of destroying the virtue that you created. Okay? So it's very important to be really careful of what we regret. Okay? And then the next one is investigation, or this is sometimes called course engagement. So this is one that examines an object in a very general way. And then again, it depends whether it's a virtuous or non-virtuous object. And then the next one goes in hand with it is analysis, or subtle engagement. And this one, looks at the finer details of the object. So it can be virtuous. Both of these factors come in when we are practicing serenity meditation. There are two mental factors that are quite important to get to the first meditative stabilization. Later we leave them behind, but they're very important at the beginning. Okay? Or if you're trying to understand emptiness, these are very important. On the other hand, if we use them to look at a diamond and rough investigation, specific investigation about the diamond's qualities so that I can get the right diamond to show off to my friends, okay, or we're, investigating, some kind of non-virtuous action, planning it in detail, all the different ifs, ands, and buts that could happen, then that makes it non-virtue. Okay? So those are the 52 mental factors. We went through them very quickly, but it gives some idea. Okay? Now, somebody's going to say, well, what about ones like fear and anxiety and worry and sadness and depression? And, there's so many more mental states that we can think of. And in some ways, we can look at these principal ones and we can see that they may tie in with some of these other ones. And these other ones may be, derived from some of the ones that we've already talked about. Okay? So, for example, what's a good one? Fear. Okay? Actually, we can have a virtuous kind of fear. If we define fear as a sense of danger, if we're afraid, and we see the danger of creating non-virtuous actions, that's a good kind of awareness of danger to have. That's a virtuous one. But if we just are terrified out of attachment to our body and wealth and reputation, then that kind of fear is a non-virtuous one. Okay? So there's different mental states like that, maybe if we were to add some more, that one might go in the variable ones. Okay? Whereas something like, let's say, depression, maybe that would be one that stems from anger and ignorance. Okay? We're kind of angry at others, angry at ourselves, but the mind has no energy, and so it just vegetates in this very unhappy state. Yeah? So, maybe that would be included in the auxiliary ones. Okay? Or worry might... and anxiety, that might be something related to attachment. Or maybe that one might be attachment and ignorance, because, what is worry is you're usually focused on one specific thing that you don't want to happen. Okay, so there's usually something you're very attached to, or someone you're very attached to, or a situation you're very attached to, and you don't want to be separated from it. So I would say worry derives from attachment. Okay, but then anxiety is more just a general free-floating, ill at ease, hyper state, isn't it? Yeah. So what do you think that one comes from, anxiety? Do you think it's just ignorance? Do you think it's attachment and ignorance?
Attachment.
You think there's attachment in anxiety?
Yeah, for sure. But yet it's anxious about something that doesn't exist, so the ignorance something fantasized.
Yeah, okay, so anxious about something that doesn't exist, so it's ignorant, but there's elements of attachment to it, because it wants something, but it doesn't know what it wants, and... Okay, yeah?
Anxiety can also be from substances too that we put in our body, caffeine and those kinds of things.
Oh, yeah.
That can trigger it.
Okay. Yeah, so that can be triggered also by substances like caffeine and so on. Many of these things can be triggered by substances, but what we want to specifically do is see how they operate in our mind, and then definitely don't get involved with the substances that trigger the non-virtuous ones, you know. So that would be, what was the one, the unconscientiousness that doesn't care about what situations we put ourselves in. So that one doesn't care about what substances we put in our body and what kind of mental states those substances induce in us. You know, because if you do take a lot of caffeine, anxiety can definitely, you know, come about. Or if you're taking downers, you know, depression can come. Okay? So, we finished that, but we're not finished with them. That is our problem. And they all are rooted in ignorance. They're all rooted in ignorance. And the reason that we are meditating on the 4 establishments of mindfulness is to get rid of ignorance. Okay? So we're going to come back to establishing mindfulness on the mind, because this is a very good way to get rid of ignorance. Okay. So, we've been saying all along that we tend to see the mind as the personal identity, and, you know, and cling on to the mind as something solid, and this is really me. And so by breaking the mind into various parts, all these different states of consciousness and mental factors and so on, primary minds, secondary minds, seeing the mind as some strong monolithic thing starts to disintegrate. So then the grasping at it being, you know, some kind of independent person also starts to disintegrate. Okay, now the nature of the mind is something pure. So it's like the sky, you know, clean, clear, nothing inherently defiled in the open sky, but the clouds come over the sky, and so you can't see it. And so in a similar way, the basic nature of the mind is something pure, but the clouds of ignorance, anger, attachment, and all these other ones we just talked about come over and obscure it. Yeah, but these defilements are not in the nature of the mind. They cover the mind, but they are not in the nature of the mind, which means that they can be eliminated since counter forces exist which can destroy them. Okay? So that's the good news. So when we're talking about the nature of the mind here, you know, talking about the ultimate nature of the mind, it's emptiness of inherent existence, which is the natural Buddha nature. Okay? And even the conventional nature of the mind, the afflictions are not inherent in even the conventional nature of the mind. However, you know, when we have a mental state that's a primary consciousness plus mental factors, that is, let's say, and one of the mental factors is anger, then that entire mental state is non-virtuous. Okay? Even though the clear and aware aspect of it itself is not non-virtuous, but because the mind and its mental factors are one nature and can't be separated, that mind of anger is not part of our Buddha nature, because that mind of anger has to be eliminated to become a Buddha. Okay? So even though that mind has a clarity and awareness, and the clarity and awareness isn't defiled, but because the whole mind together is defiled by anger, then it has to be eliminated. It can't go on to enlightenment. Okay? So, what we want to do, one of the things to practice in establishing mindfulness of the mind is to be aware of the moment-by-moment changes in the mind, and the fact that these changes depend on our sensory and mental faculties. In other words, eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, the faculties, and the objects that they contact, and then how all these things influence what the mind is. So we talked about this when we talked about feelings, that we have the object, then we have the sense power, and then those two connecting to the consciousness, generating a consciousness. And then there's the mental factor of contact there. So, why is our mind changing moment by moment by moment? Well, very often it's because the sense faculties are contacting different objects. And so the objects are changing moment by moment, the faculties are changing moment by moment, so the mind changes moment by moment. Okay? Yeah? So you're looking at a movie and the scenes are changing very quickly, aren't they? And so the eye consciousness is seeing that, and so the eye consciousness is seeing that object that's changing, it then is also changing. Okay. Now that's an example of kind of gross impermanence, because we can tell that the scenes on the movie are changing, okay? But even subtle impermanence, that's what we want to get to in our meditation, is being able to see mental states arise, abide, and cease all in the very same moment, okay? But we can start with the gross, looking at the gross things, and just seeing how, because the objects change, and, we turn our head, and so what we're contacting different objects, so then the mind is going to change with that. Okay? So you can see, one of my theories about why we need to sleep so much is because we have too much sensory stimuli, or too much emotional and thought, fabricated thought going on in our mind, and it gets exhausted. And the mind gets exhausted, so then we just need to go to sleep. So, but if you look, when the mind has all this sense stimuli, the mind's changing, the object's changing. And nowadays we think the more sense stimuli we have, the more exciting things are. Yeah? And so, that's why you walk into a store and they're playing music. God forbid there's some silence. And then there's the things that you see and you smell, and they're offering free samples to taste, and you can go and touch the object. So the senses are being very, very engaged in a store, and then the mind has been taught to think, what do I want, what do I need, what's going to make me happy? And so we start thinking about that, but then we start thinking, but I also have to pay for it, and where's the money going to come from, and what are my friends going to think about it? And so then the mental consciousness jumps in, and with all the worry and anxiety, and we call this living in a first world country and being happy. Yeah? So the basic thing is, the mind's changing because the object is changing, yeah? So even, we're in retreat right now, watch how sometimes we you know, just our mind is bored and we want to change objects. Yeah? It's very interesting to watch how people eat. Yeah? And some people, you know, because we're trained as monastics to pay attention to our bowl. Not to pay attention to other people's bowl, but to our bowl. Okay? But then you can see some people, they're paying attention to the bowl, you know, in order to put this piece together with that piece and this piece in the right amount to get exactly what's going to give them pleasure. But as soon as that goes in the mouth, then they're looking here, you know, because somebody's over by the making tea, and who's over by making tea? And some other people are still getting food, and who's over and what are they getting? And then there's somebody, you know, down the table who just made some noise. What was that noise from? And so, you know, people are, their heads are like on a swivel as they're eating, you know, down the table, up the table. Then occasionally they look up at the ceiling. Yeah. Now I know none of you think I'm talking about you. Pay attention. Yeah. But it's very interesting, you know, isn't it? You know, okay, what are we having breakfast here, there? Who's getting more? Oh, I better get, why is that person getting more? They just got some. I want more, and they're going to finish it before I can get to it. Better eat some more. Okay, this piece with that piece. Gee, that person's chewing with their mouth open. Making a lot of noise when they chew. Very bad manners. Gee, I don't see any flies up here like the ones in the meditation hall. And then there's always oh, Manjushri. What's wrong with Manju? Where's Manju right now? Where is he? Oh, better pick him up. Look at his ears. I'm talking about you, sweetie. Yeah. So, you know, so the mind completely distracted. Yeah, got to make lunch interesting because, you know, otherwise it's pretty boring. It's, you know, potatoes again. Yeah. Okay. So where were we? Okay. So, how to be mindful of the mind. Okay, so we'll start on this. There's many points here, but we'll just get past. So one, you know, start out by contemplating the mind of the past, which is now gone, and the mind of the future, which has yet to come. And that leaves only the present mind. But the present mind, too, doesn't endure. It's gone. It's gone, it's gone, it's gone, it's gone, it's gone. Okay? And it doesn't remain even for the next moment. You know, the present is there and there's no way to hold it because that moment automatically is ceasing as it's rising. Okay? And so it's very interesting to watch in the meditation, you know, instead of thinking of the past mind, you know, what I thought about yesterday, you know, what I'm going to think about tomorrow. yeah, tomorrow, let's see, what Lamrim meditation do I want to do? You're doing during your Lamrim meditation time today. Instead of meditating on Lamrim, you're planning the Lamrim meditation you're going to do tomorrow. Okay. So, try and just watch the present moment of mind. Yeah. See if you can catch it somewhere. What is the present moment of mind? Yeah. Just sit there and watch the present moment of mind. And where is it? Because the past is gone. It isn't. The future hasn't arrived. It isn't. What's that present moment of mind? What is that? Yeah? So try and just stay with that. Okay? And watch. Okay? So, this is leading us into mindfulness of the impermanent nature of the mind, how the mind is arising and ceasing in each moment. And this reduces fear at the time of death. Okay, because usually at the time of death, we feel like we're disappearing, and so there's tremendous fear. Okay, and remember, we're identifying the mind with I, and so we feel like it's all disappearing, and there's a lot of fear. But there's two understandings that if we have them, it diminishes the fear at the time of death. So, this is aside from realizing emptiness. But one of them is understanding that even though a moment of mind does not endure until a second moment, that nevertheless there is a continuity of consciousness. Okay? And so that continuity of one moment following the next is indestructible. It's going to happen. So we don't need to fear the mind going out of existence. Okay? So all of our ideas about ourself, that's all going to change. Okay? But one moment of mind is going to give rise to another moment of mind. Yeah? So we don't need to worry about the mind going out of existence because there's a continuum. Okay, so that's one of the things to be aware of. And the other is that the I, the self, the person, is imputed independence upon the mind. Okay, so if you have both of those understandings, then at the time of death, there's not going to be the fear of now I'm becoming non-existent. Because first of all, you're seeing that the mind has been temporary, has been in the process of ceasing moment by moment during your whole life. So nothing new is happening at the time of death, actually. Because the mind is just, one moment after another, arising and ceasing, arising and ceasing. That's been happening since we were born and even before we were born. So there's nothing new in that sense. And that continuity of mind is going to keep going just because, one moment of consciousness produces the next moment of consciousness. Okay? And what we call I is something that is merely labeled independence upon that mind. Okay? So you're going to have this mind that moment by moment, arising, ceasing, changing, changing. And that continuum is going to exist even though the mind itself is impermanent. Yeah? And the continuum is impermanent. When we say it continues to exist, it's eternal, but eternal does not mean permanent. Eternal just means it's not going to end, but it can continue to change moment by moment by moment. And independence upon that moment by moment change, we label I. And that's all the self is. is what's labeled in dependence upon that ever-changing mind. So what's there to be afraid of? The I's not going to go out of existence. Okay. Now, but you see, we've gotten ourselves at that point to have loosened the notion of self a little bit so that this can make sense. Because if we're still thinking of I like me and my present personality, and we're grasping onto that, then thinking about subtle impermanence and thinking that the I is merely labeled independence upon the mind, that is not going to be at all comforting. If we're holding on to, I am this person, I am children, and with this personality, and this is who I am, and I've got to exist here with my friends and my enemies and my strangers and my social role and what I like and what I don't like, because all of this is who I am, and I'm if I leave this world, I'm not going to know who I am because I define myself in relationship to all these external objects. Okay, so if you're really clinging on to that, then seeing the subtle impermanence of the mind is not going to be comforting. And you probably won't be able to see it anyway because you're too distracted by clinging and holding on to things. Okay, but if we can become habituated with this understanding and actually getting the concentration so refined that you can see the moment by moment arising and ceasing. This is what happens. They say when you have very good samadhi is that you can see each moment. Yeah. Now, all we see is like a bunch of moments stuck together and they all look permanent to us. But when you have very, very refined mind of samadhi, then you can, see each moment as it's arising and ceasing. Yeah. And then you see, there's no strong, unified thing there that is the mind, because they're just a bunch of moments that are continuing, and independence upon that we label I, and aside from that there is nothing me that is there. So this whole personality that I've constructed that I don't want to be separated from when I die has never actually been there to start with. It's completely fabricated. It's a complete sandcastle. Okay? And so, if we can get some understanding of that before we die, then dying is going to be, that it's not going to be bad at all. Because what makes dying rough is the attachment to the self and creating this self in relationship to all the objects and people around us that we're so attached to, and in relationship to which we construct our identity. And then we hold on to that identity, so we hold on to everything that we need to construct it. And it becomes terrifying to think of not being me. But when you look, and there's just arising, ceasing, arising, ceasing, arising, ceasing. And there's only a label I put on that. Then there's nothing there me to start with, so there's no me that I have to be afraid of losing. You getting what I'm saying? Sounds kind of nice and relaxed, doesn't it? You don't need to be afraid of going out of existence because there's nothing there to start with. Okay? So we might, if we're really super attached, then this whole discussion makes us very anxious. Yeah? Because it's challenging our whole concept of I, isn't it? Yeah? And so even though our notion of I is incredibly painful, we hold on to it. Because somehow It makes us feel secure. It's kind of like all those emails that we hate to have and yet we need to have them. You know? It's like, these people I don't like and these things I don't like and this work I don't like and that I don't like. But we're afraid to leave it all because it gives us a sense of who we are. I'm the person who's caught in this trap and mess and can't get free of it. That's who I am. And just even the idea of changing that conventional identity and, you know, becoming someone different or moving somewhere or doing something, it's just too scary, you know? But you see, if we do a lot of this meditation over time, then it stops being scary and it starts being rather comforting. Yeah. Oh, there's nothing there that's me? Oh, thank goodness. What a relief. You know, I don't have to worry about losing my identity. I don't have to worry about separating from all these people and all these things. Because all there is just moment by moment arising and ceasing of the mind. And there's nothing there you can grab onto, and there's nothing in there that's me. Okay. So, that's it for the evening. Try and, you know, put some of this in your meditation. Okay? One last comment. We can see sometimes how we are so addicted to sense objects and so addicted even to our emotions because they keep our mind busy so that we can't see any of this. Yeah. But I'll talk more about that next week.